Today, we're talking about the time Australia's military went to war with nature's perfect killing machines and got absolutely demolished. Most people think the Great Emu War was just about some birds. But we're talking about 6-foot-tall, 100-pound monsters that can run 30 miles per hour, kick with lethal force, and survive weeks without food. These aren't cute farm animals. They're basically feathered velociraptors that evolved to dominate the Australian outback. Here's what makes this defeat so much worse. The Australian military wasn't just beaten by birds. They were outmaneuvered by creatures with brains the size of walnuts, who happened to be perfectly engineered for warfare. We're talking about animals that can leap 9 feet in a single stride, have natural camouflage, and possess what one military expert called bullet carrying capacity. But here's the part that will blow your mind. When you look at the emu's actual physical capabilities, this wasn't a funny military mishap. This was a technologically advanced army getting schooled by biological weapons that had 50 million years of evolutionary advantages. In this video, I'm breaking down exactly why these weren't just big birds. They were nature's answer to military vehicles, and I'll show you the specific physical advantages that made Australia's defeat not just embarrassing, but inevitable. I'm convinced emus might actually be more dangerous than most people realise. Today we're talking about the time Australia's military went to war with nature's perfect killing machines and got absolutely demolished. When people hear emu, they picture a goofy bird. The reality is far more terrifying. Emus stand over 6 feet tall and weigh more than 100 pounds. That's the size of a professional linebacker covered in feathers. But here's the kicker. Their legs are devoid of feathers, and underneath their feet are thick cushioned pads with sharp claws that could deflate tires with very little effort. Their powerful legs aren't just built for speed, they're designed for violence. These weren't just silly birds. They were biomechanical battering rams with ninja equipment. The Australian soldiers weren't fighting barnyard chickens. They were engaging biological weapons that had evolved for 50 million years to survive in one of the world's harshest environments. But their size and weapons were nothing compared to their speed capabilities. In 1932, most military vehicles couldn't exceed 25 miles per hour on rough terrain. The emus had a significant speed advantage. Emus can sprint at 48 to 50 kilometers an hour. That's 30 miles per hour, and at full gallop, a stride can be as long as 275 centimeters, which is 9 feet. But here's what makes this devastating. Their long legs enable them to walk considerable distances or outrun danger. The soldiers couldn't pursue them on foot, couldn't catch them with vehicles on rough terrain, and couldn't predict where they'd be because they have natural camouflage and ability to flee, which allowed them to avoid detection. The emus weren't just running away. They were tactically repositioning at speeds that made conventional military pursuit impossible. Speed was impressive, but their endurance capabilities turned them into unkillable dodging machines. Military operations depend on supply lines and regular food. Emus are self-sufficient war machines. Emus can go for weeks without eating and can lose up to half of their body mass during periods of starvation, allowing them to survive weeks without food. While soldiers needed constant resupply, the emus were literally built for extended campaigns. They employ various strategies, such as camouflage, speed, agility, group protection, and use their height advantage to avoid and outrun predators. And if all else went wrong, they had their switchblades. The military was fighting enemies that didn't need supply lines, couldn't be starved out, and had natural stealth capabilities that made detection nearly impossible. but their individual capabilities were nothing compared to what happened when they worked together. The emus didn't just rely on individual advantages. They adapted collective strategies during the conflict. Major George Meredith reported that the emus learned to scatter when they heard gunfire, but not randomly. They developed formations where smaller groups would split off in different directions, making it impossible for machine gunners to track them effectively. When attacked, emus elevate their posture to keep their vulnerable heads and necks away from predators. They were literally adapting to the enemy during battles. These weren't just animals fleeing, they were coordinating tactical responses that neutralized the military's main advantage: concentrated firepower. When you combine all these advantages, the final casualty numbers become less embarrassing and more inevitable. The embarrassing casualty reports actually reveal how perfectly adapted emus were for this type of warfare. 986 confirmed kills with 9,860 rounds means the military achieved exactly 10% efficiency against targets that were 6 feet tall, weighed 100 pounds, and moved in groups. For comparison, trained military marksmen typically achieve 60 to 80% accuracy on stationary targets. The emus' natural abilities reduced military effectiveness by 90%. Major Meredith's famous quote: "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world," wasn't hyperbole. It was a professional military assessment of superior biological warfare capabilities. So there you have it, kids. The complete story of how 6-foot biological weapons machines outclassed Australia's military. El Mol brrr. We covered how emus are essentially feathered tanks with lethal kicks, how they can outrun military vehicles while going weeks without food, how they used natural camouflage and tactical coordination, and why their physical superiority made the military's defeat mathematically inevitable. The reality is this wasn't a funny story about incompetent soldiers losing to birds. It was advanced military technology being outperformed by 50 million years of evolutionary warfare optimization. Emus haul. The emus weren't lucky. They were nature's answer to mankind's arrogance. All hail the emus. Proof that even off-brand dinos can destroy an army. When you understand that emus are basically velociraptors disguised as goofy birds, suddenly Australia's military defeat doesn't seem embarrassing. It seems predictable. Next time someone says humans always dominate nature, remind them that nature spent 50 million years preparing for that fight. If you want to learn about other animals with military-level capabilities, and if you're interested in evolutionary advantages that put humans to shame, like, subscribe, and follow for more.